Hello, everyone. Welcome to. Okay, let's do this. Hello, everyone. Um, Tonight's episode is an interesting topic. A traveler's guide to telepathic existence. And so, Mr. Within would like to share a new approach to the notion of telepathy and, in some sense, a new view on uh, how the gears of the mind move. You see, it's as if like I find that a certain amount of my lifetime went to studying how my physical existence was in a certain position. Then after certain experiences, I began wondering about my non-physical existence. I wondered about the roots of my thoughts. I kind of tried to pull the strings of my own ideology and belief systems. And I wondered, where are they going? And as I walked beyond the fields of language, as I saw beyond the words that were in some sense creating worlds, I noticed the void. And so, seldom this is said, perhaps as playfully, but the void stares at us all. It is because simply there is dimensions of our intelligence that require to act as space. There's a part of your being acting as something in the space, and there's a part of your association with what is here, the space that is here. And so the mind actually appears as space. This idea that the mind appears as space, it means there is nothing that can be done by an individual idea of a thought doing something. You know, it's as if the person asks themselves, how, if me thinking right now is a thought, and I am having thoughts, that means the thought of me is a thought, and the thought of me having thoughts is a thought. In some sense, we have entrapped ourselves in a linguistic simulation, and it's necessary because social dimensions are preserved through how healthy language moves between people's realities, between their inner realities. Everything that has happened to you externally has had an external consequence simply because it has had an internal influence. There are days you will wake up and the world will smile at you. There will be days where you will wake up and you will, in some sense, be so ashamed of your species that you cannot even see the world. Humanity is an effort of the universal sector. It is not just the effort of the stories that we claim ourselves in. It's as if like in ancient Greek mythology, I don't remember the exact story. I need to brush up on this, but there was something where there was a labyrinth situation with some sort of centaur in the labyrinth. And so a labyrinth is a complex maze, as if the person is in a world that has certain ways and certain ways of being activated to its fullest potential. That's something I didn't realize as a kid. The child wants to live in a world where freedom is already here. As if the gentle man does not want to fight. He wants heaven here before he has walked through hell. You know, there's this quote that they say history repeats itself. The reason history repeats itself because man is not listening. Mankind doesn't listen. We we are too entertained by the future to care for the proper preservation of the past. We are too enslaved by our past to live for our future. We find ourselves in some limbo kind of a present moment where the civilization is neither efficient or inefficient, and it's just something going on, you know? It's as if the human being is, I find the species, this is how you know a civilization is inefficient or not. When the members that make up that civilization don't want to be in that civilization. You know, when we see, for example, the suicide rate go up, when we see, for example, tragedies, violence, hardships, wars increase, do you know what that means? That means we're getting dumber as a civilization. And I pinpointed it down. I wondered. I authentically wondered, and I'm going to get to the title, guys, but I got to paint some pictures before. Michelangelo has this quote where he was a great sculptor, Renaissance sculptor. And he has this quote where he says, for that time, it was an incredible, like, just viewpoint. He says, I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free. And so you see, and I will tell you something that we have lost sight of. It is, you see, your memory can change. The way your memory approaches you can change in this life the moment you have come into a sort of abidance and contentment with your own reflection of the unknown. Our ancestors, they had no choice, and that's what was beautiful about their lives. Their choices were limited. And because their choices were limited, the world came to them more savagely, as if the world bit them more cruelly. For me, because there's stuff being coming into manifestation and stuff leaving manifestation, as far as a living phenomena is concerned, that living phenomena cannot hold on to anything. Trust me, you cannot even hold on to your body if you want to. You know, there will come a time where nature's or the winds of evolution will lift the eyes of the person in beyond the personality. I guess I could somehow kind of build a bridge to the title. The reason I chose the title of tonight's episode as A Traveler's Guide to Telepathic Existence is because recently I've had a new kind of sensitivity to what that concept means. For a long time, I had put that concept away since my childhood. I'd put away the notion of the extrasensory. I thought, believe it or not, I thought it was silly. I thought, who has time to assume belief? The world is so unknown. What explorer has time to, in some sense, create a story out of their exploration when the world remains unknown, when you have not lived your life but you have ideas on it, you know. It's a remarkable place, both that which is behind our eyes and in front of it. I look at physical reality and I shout at it and I ask it, why are you here? And in through the silence I am pulled within. And what I mean by being pulled within is like not like physically within you. I mean like I mean within an awareness that the moment is being your mind and your mind is being your moment. And then comes the ultimate resolve. The suffering of lifetime breaks as if no image could impose itself on what is here directly, experientially. No idea on existence is it's just not healthy naturally. For the free will must have a divine will or it will go insane. There must be something beyond it that it is pulled to. And so you see, Friedrich Nietzsche, this German philosopher, he said, God is dead and man killed him. And there came a time where you see the concept of God is pretty much unknown. I don't know. It's as if even the whole holy revelations say the true presence of God is unknown. You know, even though there's a bit of revelation, but the vastness of the immensity of what may actually be here is unknown. So the unknown, the man kept the unknown alive in his mind, which is the spirit of evolution, through stories. Now, let's say after Friedrich Nietzsche's quote, God is dead and we killed him, man still seeks that which is beyond. And when an individual sees what is beyond them, they suddenly see their lover. And when an individual sees their lover, they see what their lover loves, and in some senses is the world. You know, that's the beautiful thing about like romance nowadays has been too caged by materialistic desire. It had a sort of kind of beyond this world elegance to it, the romance of lifetimes. There's a Rumi quote that says, "Lovers do not find each other; they are in finders don't meet; they are in each other all along." Something like that. What he means is two beings are drawn to the same moment, where in that moment, their freedom, their freedom to be as they are, it's as if you are living for someone in a way where it's as if more more beautiful than living just for yourself. And so I am noticing because not everybody can find a love story in this lifetime. The world is a hectic place. Even in ancient times, the lovers were torn apart by war. What I mean by a traveler's guide is that your free will is navigating your attention, and whatever the content of your attention is being the data for the story of your world, of the story of your life. And so as we navigate attention, I have noticed something. I personally, this is a very kind of strange hypothesis, but I am considering I am considering rationality to be semi-telepathy, a sort of critical thinking approach. The value of thought really, thought is not meaningless. I mean, in my talk, I kind of see the species as worshiping it too much, and I am kind of roaring in the streets of my civilization. Beware, language is in some sense devouring people. Ideology is making them only choose one path in life when there is a world so vast in front of you. We are chained to what we do not know. And this is why the truth would never approach until fear was confronted. Because fear was the edge of how the inauthentic was moving into the authentic. There's something they don't tell you about confronting. Fear is natural. I mean, it's like, even though I kind of paint metaphysical context in these discussions, I, at the same time, do not want the whole world to run into some fantasy. There is too much fantasy. The issue is management. The management of the content of the attention. How much are the human beings on this planet really seeing the world? And how much are they stuck in their programs of language and culture? And it is savage. It has brought, I have cried many times. Tears have ran out of my eyes after seeing certain things, as if I had seen something so tragic in the dysfunction of the human advancement. It's as if like there's a species here and we are not seeing it. It's tragic. It's kind of like a kind of like a tragedy that is indirectly a comedy. It's as if when there's existential emptiness, things become comedic. You know, when something was so intensely pursued, suddenly it had no meaning from the beginning, the person laughs. This is why when a person, I personally consider language is best used playfully, because in your playfulness, your nature moves thought rather than thought moving nature. So it's kind of like a recalibration, you know. We developed languages. We made this sort of magnificent train that is taking us into many subjective landscapes, you know, so many subjective positions. Language was incredible, you know, it's as if like we don't realize it, guys, but what was in some sense preliminary to any technology, physical technology being made, was a sort of usage of language that painted enough of a stable context for the free will to identify itself. That means your attention, trust me, the contents of your awareness and pretty much what's in your attention can move at such fast speeds where you, even if you try, you cannot put yourself into an idea. There are moments in this life where life will push you back into who you have always been, and you will look through those eyes and you will wonder. The thing is, if you want an answer, you will be disillusioned because it's changing. Do you see? It's as if you want an answer to a question, but the question is changing. Everything is changing. The only thing, as the poet said, and the philosophers kind of clarified, the only thing that doesn't change is change. Beyond the beliefs of man, there is life. But that life has been in the dualistic for too long, and it has realized it can jump and be in the unified for as long as it can, but then it sees the door of the beyond. The door of the beyond is the most powerful ideology in this existence. It is as powerful as the concept of the veil of thought, because the door of the beyond was when knowledge bowed to what it was, in some sense, what was a much more grander presence. There, your conscience, what some people say, like there's a conscience, there's this inner guiding voice at times of peril and misconduct that says, yo, stop that. You know, that inner guiding voice. It is, some people call it an inner guiding voice, but it is how your soul is crying for how your body is being burdened by the inefficient navigation of your mind. I have been in moments where I have done things where it's as if it wasn't only I who was feeling crying for my mistake. The whole moment was. I have. It's as if any. There have been many moments in this life. I'll tell you. It's like I tend to walk the path of silence often in social settings. The reason is because I am being more a mind than a body. So for me, it's as if meaning doesn't have to constantly animate into a shape. So it's as if the moment doesn't need personality unless there's a sort of condition that evokes it. So what I'm trying to say is that the mind experiences phenomena, it kind of processes the sensory data and identifies, creates checkpoints of the identity. These checkpoints, in some sense, one can say, are what Carl Jung caught on. Carl Jung, this incredible psychologist, this person, he, in some sense, these checkpoints, he acknowledged them as archetypes. And what that means is in a moment of being that is oscillating between conscious existence and between conscious experience and unconscious existence. This creature that is kind of oscillating between these worlds. There's a kind of like unique mystical vibe in ancient Vedic culture. I find the Western part of the world has a sort of misidentification, or the concept of yoga is misunderstood. Because yoga, the word means union, to join. And the reason, what is joining what is your individual experience is remembering the collective unconscious. When it remembers the collective unconscious, you watch yourself in a moment where you are even watching before your personality animates in accordance to your physical movement. I find that every human being will be shaken by nature at some point. When nature shakes you at first, you will try to give an excuse to the world. You will try to make the world a kind of place where your free will doesn't belong. And so you will move towards nihilism. We have a lot of secular societies, they have to worry about the nihilistic trap. And a lot of non-secular kind of religious societies, they need to worry about the enlightenment trap. There's two traps because they're both kind of accepting the extreme. When you accept the extreme, you in some sense make the extreme the normal, so you confuse the pattern. It's as if, think of it this way. In every generation, data is being passed down. Just as people are speaking to one another, it's as if you go look at your ancestors and you see every single one of them lived a life filled with various stories that came to them. Some were entrapped by their stories, some were freed, some moved beyond their story, some saw the unseen through their eyes. Nature lifted the psychology of the human being. Our subjective realities seek eternity. Our objective realities seek continuity. Your mind wants to go to heaven, an endless story, a story that never ends. Your body wants to stay in the world, wants to remain in the story, that even though it knows it ends. So it's incredible because human beings, they acknowledge a temporary dimension to themselves. Because they acknowledge a temporary dimension to themselves, they are inspired by the moment, how the moment appears. This is why there's the phenomena of boredom. Boredom is a divine thing. You know, people think, no, it's lame. Boy, the guy's bored. He has nothing to do. But boredom is a moment where doubt is, in some sense, slowly, a sort of subconscious doubt has stopped the cultural and linguistic programs and all these subtler programs. You see, you got to acknowledge your mind through dimensions that are real to you. You got to at first build a mirror through the observance of your own sense of self, and you have to study yourself. That is the next great teaching. That's the only teaching, to be honest. Oh, how words come and go, and they take our worlds with them. There's this show, uh, Japanese TV show, and the only thing I'm going to say about it is it's called Shingeki no Kyojin, and I recommend you go watch it. You know, it means Attack on Titan, and so I'll say this: that if humanity, if our species suddenly a danger of extinction came close. Do you know in, with what intensity our humanity will retaliate? There's a force. You see, it's as if it's a forbidden law. The violent do not understand. Species is not allowed to hurt species. That is the law. And what that means is their minds can fight. Lions can bite each other. But it means they cannot kill each other because it is killing a reflection of themselves. You must live for the world. That is the secret. You must not just exist, you must live. Now, this living doesn't mean all the time the person is in a moment of pure knowing, pure glorious knowing. Anybody who thinks enlightenment is just one state, one way of being, they are foolish because even the notion of having various states of mind, it evaporates. Your ego is kind of like some sages have said, like snow in the melting sun. Like a snowflake in the melting sun, you will look at nature, be fascinated beyond your belief, and then function. The thing is, the world has become too cool. And I have to say this. The world is still playing costume games psychologically. People, it's like after like Friedrich Nietzsche kind of claimed that mankind, in the evolutionary mind of humanity, it's as if the notion of God was no longer necessary. We began, how would I say it? It's as if the self became the only game to play. And you see in so many movies, like, the kind of troubled person goes to his family members and it's like, what should I do? And they're like, be yourself. And that's the most fascinating thing because you have only entered this life to, it's as if you were meant, let me say it like this, before I give you any story, your eyes are here. And there's some level of profoundness to that. For me, when I realize I don't know what the truth is, that is when life kind of had a new glow. I realize we have to, in some sense, reinvent the species through acknowledgement of unknown possibilities. So for me, the whole thing is it's very simple. It's like the system is too old. Like right now, we can't. Let me say it like this: we can't change what we have done, but we can change what we will do. And that's what's necessary. Development of networks where the children on this planet are called. It's as if before the child's like, what's my purpose in life? What's my calling? It's as if the child is being called. He's being called by an enlightened civilization, an enlightened society, where the human beings realize we're not just animals. We are what animals have become. Think of it this way. If you mathematically know what 2 plus 2 equals to, so you say 2 plus 2 equals 4, so whenever you see 2 plus 2 equals question mark, telepathically we can say you know what the answer is. Do you see what I mean? It is all pattern recognition. Like right now, you see me here talking. There was a time where I really academically approached the content of the educational system. I looked at it as a scholar. I saw the scholar to be the person at the highest mountain peak watching and seeing what's going on. But then I realized, oh my God, it's too robotic. The educational system is kind of like giving the illusion of uh, people learning things, but to be honest, it's just wasting people's time. What that means is, I'm telling you, that's the fascinating thing about technology. Before universities have a chance, I think this is why many universities around the world will not, in some sense, like you see many, like for example in Germany, the university is like they don't, there's no, you don't have to pay for it. But in Canada, oh my God, like so many people are walking with a weight of debt on their shoulder, just to get the degree, you see. A degree where at the end the employer doesn't care for the degree, cares for your skill and alertness and how you perform. It's like it becomes on a performance level. This is why you see acting to be a kind of pure art form, because it acknowledges its artificialness, right? But a system of knowledge that is just feeding children what it thinks is like Jesus Christ, it's so what I'm trying to say about the telepathic existence, it's kind of like a new approach that the unknown can also play a part. For example, that rock star in the on that stage suddenly, performing in that way, like the rock star does, that's not just purely based on what the rock star knows. It has to do with the kind of will that that being has to acknowledge the unknown aspects of the moment. And it's as if trust me, there's two kinds of cowards in this world. Some who are physically afraid of change, and some who are subjectively afraid of change. Alan Watts says this remarkable thing where it's as if a person waking up in the West and saying suddenly, "I realized I'm God." People are gonna be like, "Okay, this guy's like too, like going too far. Calm down, buddy." But if that guy was to, in some sense, in Indian culture, say, "I've realized God," people would laugh at him, but they would laugh at him differently than the West. They would laugh at him as if, like, "Wow, the guy just realized." You see, the East and the West it's a game between vertical drops falling from the ocean and falling from the sky into the ocean, and that horizontal dimension of the ocean. So I find that certain fears have to be confronted by just an authentic new approach. This is the unique thing in life. Whenever you're in a situation, regardless of your freedom, level of freedom and ability, just begin doing things because movement animates the mind until subjective movement takes over, and then you don't have to even physically move, your mind's going places. You see, something that's missing in current civilization is a culture of attention. This is what something I've talked about in other episodes when I've kind of commented on the educational system. I said that there should be a class every year of the child, every year of it, and this is the beautiful thing about meditation. It doesn't have to do with words. It has to do with self-reflection. So at most, it's like just ask the person a proper question, and the person's eyes will open in a way where that person knew they were always open. You see, there's many things that you subconsciously know, but you consciously can't accept that you know, because if you consciously accept you know, your personality in that moment would suddenly become transparent, become fade. It would fade. So whether you walk internally or externally, enjoy the walk either way, because change is incredible. It is how the eyes of the universe never stop open. There's this story where this kid, this young man in a village, hears that there's this enlightened sage. And he goes to the enlightened sage and sees the enlightened sage is just sitting on his porch in meditation all the time, just sitting still and silent. And the kid goes there and says, "Sir, hi, I've heard you're enlightened. Let's have a conversation. I want to hear what you have to say." The guy is silent, silent, silent. This kid, this guy has such a strange calmness and stillness to him that this kid, in some sense, decides that he's going to stay there until he gets some sort of truth. This man seems to know something. Every day the kid comes and asks. It's as if his whole activity is he constantly tries to get this man to talk. He's kind of being like a mosquito in his meditation, the kid. And so the kid is like, "Sir, tell me please. I've been here for like weeks asking you every day. Like, I don't understand how you're meditating this long. Like, you know, please tell me, sir." And the guy's eyes suddenly open, but he's still and silent, and there's no words. The kid, eventually, after many weeks, imagine like many weeks of constantly sitting by this person, the person not acknowledging the kid. I mean, the person acknowledges the kid but doesn't say anything. And this kid gets fed up one day and he's like, "What is this? You have no respect for people." And he shouts at the sage that's just silently meditating. And he's like, "I'm never coming back. What is this? You're not enlightened. If you were, you'd share it with the world." Da 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 da. The kid says something angry and through a rude intent, through the openness to be rude of an intention. And so the kid storms out as if he created a storm and he left. And he said, "You in some sense are no enlightened man." And he shouted and he left. He said, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." you know. And in that moment, the kid kind of leaves with anger and rage, as if it's as if like he's being pulled by the dark side of the force, you know. The kid, as he's leaving, suddenly he gets a feeling as if, damn it, I should go back. And he feels that that man's calmness was standing in a way that it was uncommon. So he's intuitively driven back. He goes back kind of with a defeat. His ego, his ego is defeated. He has put his ego aside. And he just goes there and sits still and silent by the stage. He no longer asks a question. Then what that means is, why this subjective simulation of values that constantly, fluctuate between good and bad throughout the day? Why this ceaseless coming and going, and why not just see what is here? Because what is here becomes, at first, it's just a material landscape, but then becomes a subjective responsibility for the continuity of the biological value. So it's as if we have no choice but to study our minds, because our body's greatest tools are the mind. That is something that I believe the secular society and the religious societies have in common. The way they look at the world is, of course, different. But what they have in common is that they are human beings who have moments where they are both looking at the unknown. And that's when I felt, this is where I say it's like you feel the love of the species. So what I mean by that is that you suddenly see everybody is looking at the unknown. They just don't realize it, or are too afraid to look at it directly, look at the emptiness of this world directly. So they have to, hide in a bunker of meaning. And they will be, it's a kind of like it's like there's no, it's like the same way some wise person once said, like, you shouldn't have regrets. Regrets are meaningless to have. It doesn't matter what kind of regret it is. Don't have regrets, right? But you begin to see a person who feels life is eventually going to nothing is like regretting something, regretting the authorization of the cruel reality. There was this poet who had made a mistake, and he had gone to his mother, and this is like 700 years ago. The poet's name is Sadi. And he says, "Mother, forgive me. Forgive me for my sins. For even though they were my sins, you brought me into this world." And it's as if in that moment you begin to see the dimensions of, like, just a mother's kind of, they say there's this, I was raised in Iran until the age of 7. And there was a saying they would say, I remember it was, the saying was, heaven is built under the feet of mothers. That means the mother's compassion is like God, is like creator watching creation. And this is not always, of course, every human being is different. Something I would teach all, like I would in some sense kind of say that we should just say to all children in the world that, of course, have an emotional kind of trust the moment family, but also recognize you are a creature in a world, and the world moves as much as you do. So that kind of activates the yogic alertness. It's like this, like the same way we are right now, being aware of everything that's going on in society. Same way it was like the yogi and walking in the forest, being aware of every creature in the space of awareness. There's kind of this, like, strange story from, I believe it's the Upanishads, or some yogic or Buddhic text. And the story is, there's this person who there's this person. Okay, so how would I explain this context? Before Buddha kind of brought forth Buddhism, there was Brahmanism. There was a sort of asceticism, ceremonial approach to God. That means this is something a lot of people on this planet don't acknowledge to the history of yoga and the history of Buddhism, that the Buddha opened his eyes in a world where the concept of uh, meditation predated him, but his approach was new. And so the thing was, there's stories of Buddha being in this kind of like environment where he's gone to see how other people are approaching truth, different paths to truth, and he's being introduced to asceticism and certain ritualistic behaviors, as if people had weird rituals, as if, like they were trying to move their attention in weird ways to see, in different ways to see the truth of it all. And so even there's a story where Buddha does this ascetic practice where he doesn't eat, and it's these yogis who just sit somewhere and they don't eat until a point where they get close to death, and when they're gone close to death, they're suddenly seeing the divine. I believe it was Socrates who, when he was in court in front of the old men of Athens who were prosecuting him. Socrates during his last moments of life, like a moment before his last moment. He roars in court that, okay, man, excuse me, guys, I had to explain this better. Socrates goes to court. He's going to court because people are telling him he's spreading his own propaganda of how the divine works in comparison to the ancient Greek gods that were standing in the clouds. So the ancient Greeks began to kind of feel like, okay, yo, Socrates is saying his own, kind of spiritual stuff. But what about the gods that are watching us? What if Zeus throws lightning? Like, so it was a sort of fear. You trust me, violence is only sparked by existential fear. The being is being violent because they are afraid. And when a person does violent activity, a couple of them, then the foolish thing that occurs is that they identify. It's as if they feel that if they are hitting first, they are not getting hit, so the person is being an animal for the rest of their life violently, you know. But it's so important to realize that there is no fight. There's this quote by this Tibetan master named Sogyal Rinpoche. He says, until you conquer anger, your enemies will be inexhaustible. So it doesn't matter how much you try to defeat like fight this world. It's the inner approach that is the limitation, not the outer. It doesn't matter if you're like, somebody said something hilarious, like you can use a knife. You can use a knife to, in some sense, do something dangerous, or you can use a knife to cut fruit, do something that's not dangerous. So it's kind of like you realize it's how you approach the moment that is giving value for its continuity. So you study your attention, you get fascinated by it, and then your own personal study develops. This is what I say, it's called your great work. And the great work is this notion that your lifetime is your lifetime is something where you're here to experience life through your eyes, but also through beyond your eyes. Anyway, Socrates, he said at the time of death, men are given uh, divine spiritual power. That means when a being is about to exit this reality, there is a unique subjective freedom. Their ego experiences a divinity, a transparent divinity, as if you see that meteor about to hit Earth, and so you laugh at all the fears and all the pressures and stresses on a microcosmic level, when the macrocosmic approach is like, wow, you know. On some level, life is an incredible play of elemental forces. On another level, it is a sort of vision. It's as if a person who finds a person who finds a moment of meaning in their life. It is as if the body has found a way to remember itself, its origin as the mind. So this is very unique, even though your physical body originated on Earth, your sense of self originated from behind your eyes. And so that's thing through stories. Sometimes its stories are complex, but at some point it's as if that poet said, the celestial commanders will give their commands, and life will move on because nature is the true commander. It's as if rediscover your allegiance with nature, begin caring for living phenomena. You know, this is why I personally stopped killing insects for no reason. I was like, okay, it's like, why is that necessary? It took some level, like some evolutionary time for that moth to exist. It's like there's no need to eradicate it. I find that eventually the person, after living enough of a life as a personality, as a persona, as a sort of name in the void, they in some sense begin living life as their presence. When you live as your presence, the silent dimensions of your intelligence open up. So your intelligence moves in different ways. So your attention suddenly finds itself being like a pilot of your consciousness navigating. You can navigate into emptiness simply, and you can navigate into what is full and formed in very complex ways. The simple reason is because you're not identifying with the object of observance, because the presence of the observer, it has become an ultimate clarity, an ultimate certainty, right? So I don't know, something around these lines. It's all about to sort all these drops merging into a stream, streams merging into rivers, rivers finding the ocean, regardless of how the water falls. They called it self-realization. That means your real eyes were here before the sense of self was. Welcome, dear listener, to the world of mankind. We are a sort of evolutionary effort of evolutionary design. This effort of evolutionary design, regardless of its past, regardless of how we paint history and how it was, we have to find the most efficient ability. So this is what I say. This is Mr. Within's kind of formula to, in some sense, advancement of the civilization. Every person in every moment looks at life not as a sort of person wanting something. The personality, the persona, they are just dreams. They come and go every day. Your sense of self reanimates based on your energy levels. Who we are is nature's movement as much as it is our movement, and that commands inner responsibility. So this is the way to approach. This is a new approach, Mr. Within's new approach. In every moment you wonder where meaning is. You wonder, who are you living for? And if you are not living for other people, you're most likely living for yourself. And if you're living for yourself, you're wondering what self that is. And you may have kind of distracted that self with future ambitions. But you have to realize life has to be maneuvered. It's kind of like a manual car. It's like when cars were made automatic, as if all those race car drivers were like, what? They took the fun out of it. You know? Seek the efficient vision. Every moment has an efficient vision. You just have to patiently observe the world until it is found. And there's this incredible Zen, like it's not a Zen saying only, but it's, you know, the saying says, don't chase the butterfly of wisdom. Sit still and silent among the flowers, among the lotus. And then you see the divine butterfly lands on your forehead. You accept life enough for its greater dimensions to open up, and eventually you find yourself experiencing various inner territories of your being. these inner territories is kind of like, imagine, it's kind of hilarious, this metaphor, but it's like a spotlight, kind of moving. Like, imagine a light, spotlight, a giant spotlight moving in like a dark forest, you know? It's like whatever it shines a light on in that moment, it is in some sense bringing into a visible form from the darkness, you know? This is why kind of light always wins darkness, because light kind of shows you more, you know. Evil gets boring because it's just too much of a loop of your animal instinct, you know. If you ask Mr. Within, like, how would I say it? Like, your greatest self is your greatest civilization. Simply said, that is it. So now you see how I'm giving these talks. I am watching in front of me as this science project that took 4 billion years called humanity, and I'm just from a distance looking, and I'm like, okay, what's happening with it? The era of beliefs are over. Watch life, observe life prior to any linguistic design. Find a moment that is free before the concept of freedom had to be a retaliation against the subconscious lack of. It's as if, think of it this way: if there was a war of imagination and that war came to recruit soldiers, it's as if the external war requires people who can hold weapons and fight in vicious ways. And then the inner sort of call to arms is the artistic approach, where you realize the value of art in a temporary civilization. The ability to realize that any human being who shares what is true in their experience, that is, it's as if, like, regardless of what you say or not, the stage of humanity grows in contemplation. Driven by the intentions of evolution, by the enforcements of evolution. The attention acknowledges the moment as something that is just simply being. In ancient Vedic thought, they called this Satchit Ananda. Conscious existence is bliss. I kind of, it's like, it's this thing about knowing that most people think, especially I believe professors, that knowing has to be rooted in some sort of kind of written display. This is what I find fascinating. Even though there are many ideological structures currently in our civilization, You can even say that they're like kind of collective beings, like these giants, like these titans in civilization. And they are how one ideology is being found to be real by many. And as that occurs, there comes a sacrifice of the attention of all those people to that one thought when the world is filled with many thoughts. Chung Tzu had a very incredible approach to his mind as a master. He said thoughts are like leaves of a tree. As the seasons pass, they change. That means you might not believe this, but the texture of your memory changes in accordance to the last moment where it was recalled. A playful free will finds itself on a train of biological evolution. And as we are being moved by nature, we cannot avoid the intelligence that we see in it. You see, you have to be playful and entertain it because everything is to some degree self-reflective. We are not, I believe there are certain inhibitions to truth, certain biological, based on our biological design, even if we try, we cannot see. It's because it's like we are not, our attention is not made for that dimension of the world. Because that dimension functions beyond duality, so there is a sort of non-conceptual approach. So a non-conceptual approach means that the cosmos moves behind your eyes. So what is you suddenly dismantles, the ideal moves away, you're a pure moment, the cosmos is here. What do you have to say? Thanks for tuning in, guys. Much blessings and namaste.